Okay, so we talked about the sympathetic nervous system and how its chain of ganglia are all lined up next to the vertebral system. It's a really fast initiation. It's that cervical thoracic outflow. The opposite system is the parasympathetic nervous system. It also uses a two-neuron pathway where the second neuron, it synapses with the second neuron outside of the central nervous system. The preganglionic cell bodies of the parasympathetic nervous system are found in the nuclei of the brainstem and in the sacral spinal cord, and so this system is often called the cranial sacral outflow, as opposed to the cervicothoracic with the sympathetic system. The ganglia of the parasympathetic nervous system are separate. Unlike the interconnected ganglia of the sympathetic trunk, the parasympathetic ganglia are located near or in their target organs. So because the sympathetic trunk, the ganglia are all interconnected, the sympathetic system reacts fast, and it's a whole system reaction. The whole system reacts together. The parasympathetic system, on the other hand, it's more spread out and it takes longer to affect a change in the parasympathetic system. So 20 to 30 minutes to set up that relaxation response. Where we talked about the sympathetic system being the fight or flight system, the parasympathetic system is the rest, digest, and procreate system. So its main function is energy conservation and digestion. Energy conservation and the breakdown of nutrients, and procreation. So the parasympathetic ganglia are located at or near the target organs. They're spread out all over the body, and it's a slow effect. So in the example where the deer runs in front of your car, bam, your sympathetic system is activated, happens really fast. It's not as soon as the threat is removed, your parasympathetic system is activated and you're immediately relaxed. It takes a while. So if you went home right after that whole deer thing and tried to go right to bed, you probably wouldn't be able to sleep right then. It would take you a little while to relax and activate your parasympathetic system for that energy conservation. So principal functions of the parasympathetic system are energy conservation and storage and procreation. So there are efferent fibers in the vagus nerve that innervate the heart and the smooth muscle of the lungs and digestive system. There are fibers in the cranial nerves that innervate the salivary glands and lacrimal glands, and that's the digestive system again. And then there are also fibers that in the cranial nerves that constrict the pupil and increase the convexity of the lens of the eye for focusing on close objects. So we are eating, we are looking at our food, we are doing things close up, as opposed to the sympathetic system where the pupils dilated and the upper eyelids lifted, so we can scope out the horizon and find our escape route. Okay, so the sacral parasympathetic efferents regulate the emptying of bowel and bladder and erection of the penis or clitoris. So if you're running away from the lion and your sympathetic nervous system is activated, you do not have time to stop and pee. So the sympathetic system constricts your sphincters of your digestive system. After the threat is removed and your parasympathetic system kicks in, then you realize, oh my gosh, my bladder's full, and you got to go empty it. The parasympathetic system is for when we are not under threat, and the sympathetic system is for when we are under threat. So there is a chart in the chapter, and it's also in the module. I think it's a little clearer in the chapter because they're different colors that allow you to differentiate the different lines. But we'll just look at it really quickly. So basically it shows the different parasympathetic and sympathetic effects on organ function. So it has the eye, a diameter of pupil and curvature of lens, the heart contraction rate, etc. And there's an up or down arrow to show the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic effect. So we'll just, for example, looking at the diameter of the pupil, the sympathetic effect increases the diameter of the pupil, it dilates the pupil, let more light in, we can find our escape route from the threat. The parasympathetic effect, it constricts the diameter of the pupil, and it allows you to focus on close items more with the increased curvature of the lens. So I just want you to be able to identify what is a sympathetic effect or a parasympathetic effect. So there's actually, I've seen board exam questions where they said you become aware that your patient is having an autonomic dysfunction. Which of the following is not an effect of the sympathetic system? So they'll say anxiety and distractibility. Yeah, that's a sympathetic effect because our heart rate goes up and we have more anxiety. Cold and mottled skin. Yeah, that's a sympathetic effect because it's shunting blood away from our skin into our effector muscles. Okay. Constriction of the pupils. No, that's a parasympathetic effect. We need our pupils dilated for a sympathetic effect, so that one is not a sympathetic. And profuse sweating. And yeah, that's a sympathetic effect. So, just being able to identify those and pick out which one of these things is not like the other. For some reason, a lot of times on board exams, they like to say that all of these are effects of this system except, or which one of these is not an effect of the system. So a lot of times I will write exam questions like that because I'm trying to prepare you for the board exam. So I would like you to know just the comparison of the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic effects on organ function. Sounds like a matching question, doesn't it? Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about in this chapter is in the end of the chapter they have sort of a brief little paragraph on different pathologies that affect autonomic systems. For example, Horner's syndrome, it's a lesion in the sympathetic pathway to the head. So you get ipsilateral on the same side as the lesion, drooping of the upper eyelid, and constriction of the pupil. There's a picture of it in the book. And there's a little 2.5-minute video, someone talking about Horner's syndrome. Skin vasodilation and absence of sweating on the ipsilateral face and neck. In the spinal region, of course, bowel, bladder, and genital function and homeostatic control, blood pressure regulation, and body temperature can you can have different systems varying with the level of the lesion. So since the spinal cord injury is interrupting autonomic signals in both directions, you don't have the effectors that are going out, the efferents telling us to empty our bowel and bladder, and controlling blood pressure and body temperature, and you don't have the efferents telling you that, yeah, it's cold out here or it's warm out here. So that's something to be aware of with spinal region. And in the spinal chapter we will talk about autonomic dysreflexia and some other things specific to spinal cord injuries. Because inadequate, the sympathetic system controls optimum blood flow to the organs. Inadequate blood flow to the brain can cause loss of consciousness or fainting, syncope. And its causes can include powerful emotions, insufficient cardiac output, hypoxia, and hypoglycemia. So some of the different autonomic effects are kind of interesting. I think that's all I'm going to say about autonomic clinical correlations, but just to ground it clinically a little bit. And we will talk a little bit more about the autonomic nervous system in other chapters, like the spinal chapter, where it affects a particular system. So that's it for chapter 9. It should be short and sweet and hopefully not too painful this week. And after that we will move on to the motor system, which is very interesting.